Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lusk. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. It's been a busy last week or so, but I'm glad to be back on in about, it's been about 5-6 days since my last stream. So glad to be back on. Let's go ahead and talk about some crazy things going on around the war in Ukraine and, of course, the war in Ukraine itself. We got information about the metals deal. We've actually gotten to see some of it that start panning out. At least the information on it. We got an interesting event in the Black Sea. We've got Ukrainians going back into Kursk again, and of course everything about the latest on the parade for May 9th for Russia. So let's go ahead and jump right into things here. I got some stuff that'll be interesting, I think. Let's go ahead and jump right in. This is information about the metals deal, and this is Max 24's analysis of it. It'll be a partnership. The fund will have a 50-50 share. The U.S. will be able to count new military aid as a contribution to the fund. Ukraine only makes a contribution from new mineral licenses. No U.S. aid that was provided before the agreement is its subject. The fund must invest in the development of Ukraine for 10 years. The agreement stipulates zero tariffs for the U.S. and Ukraine. The American side undertakes to attract other partners. That basically puts America in the marketing game for Ukraine. So really interesting right there. And it does not have any problems at all with Ukraine's accession to the European Union. So overall, my analysis of this one, or at least from what I've seen, is that this is a much better deal for Ukraine. That does not make it a perfect deal, but it is a much better deal than the one we saw just a few weeks ago. The mineral deal marks a positive step in the right direction. With the ball now in Putin's court, Trump should put pressure on Moscow to make a move towards a ceasefire. And we're seeing some signs that there may be that going on. For instance, there is indication that Moscow has delayed their next meeting with the U.S., potentially even their next meeting with Donald Trump. And this could be because they're having to rework their approach to the United States in the light of this new deal. So we're watching that with great interest. Another thing that happened because of the deal is that the impasse on aid to Ukraine was finally broken. The U.S. State Department approved a $310 million F-16 training and support package for Ukraine. You may have seen in a previous video that 3 F-16 bodies were shipped to Ukraine, likely for spare parts, unlikely to be complete. The word is they didn't have engines, for instance. But again, we don't have any proof of that, just the general rumor mill talking about it. But the F-16 is basically becoming the backbone of the Ukrainian Air Force because of this break of the impasse here, because it will be available in quantity from various sources. So Donald Trump did issue another statement. He had a meeting, well, a phone call, if I understand, with the president of Turkey, Recep Erdogan. And they talked about the war in Ukraine, amongst other things. And he says that he's looking forward to working with Erdogan to end the, quote, ridiculous but deadly war between Russia and Ukraine. If Putin isn't convinced by Trump to make peace, we could bring forward more convincing arguments for peace very quickly, according to European Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius. This is basically saying we're going to show strength to Vladimir Putin. No more of this pussyfooting around saying, look, we're not going to send things to Ukraine because we're afraid of what Vladimir Putin might do. No, this is taking the brakes off and saying if Trump can't make this peace quickly, we can give Trump some really convincing arguments by making certain Ukraine has all the support they need. This is where Dmitry at War Translated is the one that provided the information about Russian sources claiming the Kremlin halted talks prep with Trump after this Ukraine-U.S. mineral deal. They're basically revising their White House engagement strategy in the light of a successful deal having finally been inked between the U.S. and Ukraine. Of course, Trump, being Trump, said, "We're closer to one side, but I won't say which. A time will come when I'll say, fine, keep being foolish. It's about the huge hatred between them." And I'll tell you honestly, if Russia had just stayed in their nation starting in 2014, I don't think there'd be a huge amount of anger or hatred between them. No, I don't think they'd be best buddies, but they would not be in this circumstance here of having had 11 years of war. And that'll engender a lot of hatred. So let's move over to what happened in the Black Sea. This is video of a Ukrainian drone. Let me pop this up to a larger size here. This is video of a Ukrainian drone firing a missile. This is a naval drone firing a missile and destroying a Russian Su-30 fighter bomber. This is the first recorded engagement of a sea drone with a fixed-wing aircraft and the successful destruction from it. Really interesting. Now, this one reported it was the R-73. No, they were actually American AIM-9 Sidewinders, reportedly the AIM-9M model, which was a very good modernization of the AIM-9, but it's been out since before the Gulf War. So we're not talking the latest and greatest. This is not the AIM-9X, which is the most recent version of it, as I understand. We're talking about a version that's still 30 years old. 30-some years old, actually. Wow. Whew, been a while. So this is still taking down Russia's best on a day-to-day basis. Now, the thing is that there was also a report that it wasn't just one, but two of these fixed-wing Su-30 aircraft. Now, I've gotten this. This is from President Zelensky himself, stating that a second aircraft was destroyed by, again, a naval drone. Really interesting to see. So I believe it to be accurate. I don't have any further proof beyond Zelensky and a variety of other sources also stating it. This General Kirill Budanov has also confirmed that there were two of these Su-30 SM fighters that were taken out by AIM-9s by their naval drones. So really fascinating stuff. This is really putting really making those naval drones, even more effective than they have been in the past. They're already effective, but now they're even more so, being able to defend against these air targets. Let's go ahead and whip over to Kursk for just a moment here. Russians filmed Ukrainian mine-clearing vehicles pushing through the Dragon's Teeth and minefields near the Kursk border. And if you actually watch this footage here, you'll see that they're talking about the Ukrainian tanks just pushing on through with their equipment. And if you listened, which I'm not going to play this one because it would be just plain noisy, and there's a lot of Russian cuss words in it, but they actually, you hear the explosion of one of these things happening, and if you time it, you can figure out how far away the base is from this incursion right here. So the Russians are giving away their own positions, and I'm not going to say no to that. But it only took a moment for them to push through the Dragon's Teeth, because without the protection, the Dragon's Teeth don't really do much. Again, another one of the videos. This one actually has the subtitles. Rather than going through it again, I'm going to go ahead and just pop the link in here for you guys to take a look at and move on. Before this incursion happened, though, a bridge was destroyed in Zavonoa, I think is the correct pronunciation, in the Kursk region. This appeared to have been preparation to prevent reinforcements from the Russian side from coming into the area that the Ukrainians were going into. Really interesting to see. This is like the day before the incursion. The Ukrainians struck also a Russian drone command center in Russia's Kursk region near the village of Tyotkino, which is where this incursion is happening at. Here's a good map for you, giving you an idea of it. This is the Glushkovsky district in the Kursk region. Ukrainian forces shelled Tetkino and engaged in a firefight near the railway station with up to 5 Ukrainian soldiers, which always makes me laugh a little bit. You know, the Russians make it sound like there's 1,000 guys over there, and yet when they actually get down to it, there were 5 guys with some rifles that were spotted in the area of this railway station, and a bridge that was blown up that we already mentioned. This is overall is a new push. Now, some context here: the Russians have been trying to push into the Sumy region. There's been some fighting right on the border. The Ukrainians and the Russians have both evacuated some villages in that area. This new encroachment into Kursk appears to be to try and draw more Russian troops off of that area. Now, somebody mentioned that there were 15,000 North Korean troops in this area, so they wouldn't need to necessarily redirect Russian troops to do so. But the last time the Russians had to push the Ukrainians out of Kursk, it required 60,000 troops to do so. From War Gonzo, which is a Russian source, also talking about this area. This is early in the assaults. They had made the passage in anti-tank obstacles and with infantry in the area. The overall report is that the demining equipment pushed through the obstacles and got the main assault force through. Then a combination of lightly armored vehicles with troops in them were pushed on through the gap and came into the Kursk region in this new incursion. Now, this could just be a reconnaissance in force. Always possible. But so far, this is over the last couple of days. It appears to have at least a few days of staying power, if not longer. The village of Klushkovo is being evacuated due to the complicated situation in Kursk. Residents who are currently there need to temporarily evacuate, according to the head of the village. Now let's talk about Vladimir Putin's May 9th parade. By the way, I've been talking for a little bit. I do want to say, if you're tuned in, absolutely jump in and let me know you're here. Give me some idea that can comment and let me know that you are paying attention. I do appreciate you guys showing up. I happen to know that I'm also on here keeping an eye on the stream. So it'd be great to see some of you guys pipe in and let me know you're here. Now, let's talk about the parade. That's right. Vladimir Putin said, hey, well, let's have a 3-day ceasefire that happens to coincide with my May 9th parade, where I'm going to have foreign dignitaries there to gush over our Russianness and how we won World War II. Well, Zelensky said, that's great. I've got a 30-day ceasefire on the books here. I'm ready to go with a 30-day ceasefire. I'm not going to recognize a 3-day one. And that caused all kinds of consternation over on the Russian side. They have made some indications that they are not to be held responsible for the safety of the dignitaries and the heads of state that come to this parade. They will not be held responsible for their safety. That's entirely on Vladimir Putin. In fact, the reports we're seeing is that 280 pieces of air defense equipment have been moved to Moscow from other areas, pulling them off from even vital areas of the near the front lines and other vital industries to protect the May 9th parade. President Xi Jinping is going to be visiting Moscow for this Victory Day parade, even. Now, this has been kind of going back and forth. I've seen a couple of versions saying that Xi Jinping might be pulling out of going to this, but we're going to have to see what that actually comes out with. In Sevastopol, however, the May 9th parade has been canceled for security reasons. Now, this is in Crimea here. This is just the other day, they had a massive drone attack that both hit targets in Crimea and went through and over to Novorossiysk and took out the fuel tanks over near Novorossiysk. So they're saying that they're not even going to try to do a May 9th parade in Sevastopol. However, that doesn't stop them from doing other forms of parades. In fact, the Russian activists marched in Washington, D.C., from I believe it was the White House to the World War II monument, is what I remember being reported. They were followed by Ukrainian activists that followed this pro-Russian march and shouted their own slogans as a counter-protest. So this is a real concerning development in my mind, but it is what it is. It's already happened. However, during the preparations for Victory Day, in a really amazing piece of coordination, all the mobile operators in Moscow decided to stop working at the same time during the parade rehearsal. This is just indicates that there could be some real interesting things happen around the parade this year. President Zelensky stated, "We know who we're dealing with. Russia may stage provocations on May 9th. It's their style. They talk of a partial ceasefire, but today's assaults are the most intense in months." And I'll be talking about some of the other information about those provocations in just a moment. Speaking of provocations, however, over on the bank of the river Narva, Russia has installed enormous video screens that are facing Estonia. They want to boast about their past victories and threaten their neighbors with future aggression. This is their way of doing so. Of course, amongst those leaders who are deciding to visit are, of course, Hungarian Prime Minister Fico Slovakian Prime Minister Fico and Serbia's President Vučić. So the people that are very much pro-Russian are the ones that are showing up. It's Orban that's in Hungary. I've not heard if he's going to attend or not. Let's talk about some provocations. According to preliminary information obtained from human intelligence, this is passed on by Inform Napalm, instructions were given to the FSB, that's the Russian intelligence organization, at a fairly high level to stage demonstration terrorist attacks in several regions of the Russian Federation during the parades on May 9th. At the same time, all efforts are being made to ensure the parade in Moscow takes place without incidents. But the regions are not only left without cover, but they are also planning to create several high-profile informational pretexts. Among the regions for such operations, Khabarovsk, Ulan-Ude, and others are currently being considered. The goal is to accuse Ukraine of indiscriminate attacks on civilian populations, to disrupt the U.S. peace initiatives, and to use these pretexts to mobilize additional resources from Russian regions. This is a classic false flag attack of Russia on itself being prepared. The Inform Napalm published this information, and immediately they started getting basically accusations of being fake, giving false news, to the point that the FSB is simulating a flurry of activity to try and defocus the information about this leak of their instructions for the FSB to create their own terrorist attacks. So keep an eye out on this. If there is terrorist-style attacks in Russia, it's probably the FSB. That's how they arranged to go into Chechnya, after all. They attacked their own people. There is another parade that just happened as well. The Ukrainian military personnel participated in a parade in London marking the 80th anniversary of Victory Day. Understand that the Brits are training great numbers of Ukrainian troops, so this is likely a unit that is there for training anyway. So they went and marched in the parade. You see that the commentator states, "It is in their hands now, the challenge to fight for peace in Europe." Something interesting happened, though. As the Ukrainian unit went by, King Charles stood and saluted the Ukrainian defenders. This is serious respect. Not a lot of news out of Ukraine itself. There's been plenty of attacks. I mean, let me rephrase that. Plenty of news, but not a lot of unique news. There's this information of attacks on the border villages of Belapilia and Vorozhba over in the Sumy Oblast. This damaged in civilian infrastructure and triggered emergency evacuations. Over in Russia, however, North Korea has sent 15,000 migrant workers to Russia to help fill their labor shortages in Russia. That's because they've been sending all their men to Ukraine to fight there, and so now North Korea is sending a lot of their migrant workers there as well. There was a fire at a transformer substation in Saratov, Russia, which disrupted power at 2 base stations, with key industrial sites including Gazpromash oil refinery, the Piro Group factory, and a mobilization center that lost electricity. Now, this is reported as being partisan movement that set the transformer on fire. Drones were seen attacking the Moscow suburbs. This caused the carpet security plan at Vnukovo and Domodedovo airports. As war translated, Dmitry states, "Everything's going according to plan. They're just getting ready for the parade." Over 2,500 kilometers deep into Russia, there was another drone attack taking place. This is far and deep behind Moscow, deep into Russia, and this caused the Nadim airport to have to shut down operations because of the drone. It's been about 4 hours now, over 100 Ukrainian drones were flying towards targets across western Russia, indicating that the Russians aren't the only ones able to launch mass drone attacks. The Strela factory in Suzymba, Bryansk region in Russia was struck as of yesterday. The factory produces electronics for the Russian military, specifically radar equipment. Very good target to take out. How about this armored tractor in Russian service? The Ukrainians, of course, used a drone to take out the armored tractor. Always entertaining to see what Russia pulls out next. Over in Simferopol, deep in the heart of Crimea, checkpoints have been spotted at railway crossings and important intersections. This tells me that Russia is very concerned that they're not able to protect their rear areas at this point in time. They're even having to watch for, in fact, as my understanding is that not only did they have shovels and mine detectors, but they were stopping every vehicle that did not have a Russian license plate on it. They're scared about something. We don't know exactly what. Over on the international front, I don't have a huge amount today, but there are some interesting things happening. There was an attack on a Israeli airport launched by the Houthis in Yemen. Israel has now launched a military operation against Yemen in response. This is reportedly in coordination with the United States, which no surprise. The Israeli Air Force is striking the port city of Hodeidah in response to yesterday's Houthi attacks. Ports, bases, and airports are currently under heavy bombardment. There's also a report that the U.S. is shopping around to get another couple of Patriot systems. One will come from the U.S. come from Israel via the U.S. It's a PAC-2 or an older model system that is being brought to the U.S. to be refurbished and prepared to be sent on to Ukraine. They're also looking to see if Greece which, by the way, Greece has said no, they will not be sending a unit, but Germany and a few other possibles that could send a Patriot system to Ukraine. There is a possibility of an alternative to NATO for Ukraine, and I've not heard of this before. And this is has been forwarded as an idea by former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Vadim Prystaiko. This involves joining the British-led Joint Expeditionary Forces, which unites 10 Northern European countries. Interesting to see. I didn't know about this Joint Expeditionary Force. Be really interesting to see what they're actually going to do with it. The United Kingdom is upgrading its own drone warfare capabilities. This is the Storm Shroud drone for electronic warfare. It's got a 2.5 kilogram Bright Storm system, which jams aircraft and missile radars, and can be launched by catapult, and is intended to boost strike aviation. Real interesting little piece of hardware there. And I don't know if we'll see it on the front lines of Ukraine, but I'll bet you that's where they're getting the ideas from. From President Zelensky, some in Europe block Ukraine's EU path for better seats at Red Square. That would be, he's referring to Vucic and Fico, and probably as well Orban over in Hungary. These are the people that have accepted the invitation to join on the May 9th parade. Zelensky stated, "We're ready to open initial negotiation clusters, but certain figures stall progress not for their nations, but for personal gain. European values must prevail." Now, the European Union is saying they have new plans for boosting support for Ukraine by buying directly from Ukrainian arms makers, cutting costs in half. Number one, that means the arms are already there because the Ukrainians are making them. And number two, it puts some money in Ukraine's pocket to help them with buying more weapons and equipment. This is a really interesting, basically 2-for-1 deal. It's cheaper to make them in Ukraine because they're already cranking things out at high volume, and the extra money will help Ukraine to crank out even more. Now, this is news from May 3rd. There was a rumor that emerged that more sanctions against Russia would be coming from both the U.S. and the EU. Seems to have kind of petered out, at least at this point in time. Oh, gee. Sorry about that. Seems to have petered out, at least at this point in time. But considering the way things are going, this could come out in some additional way. As Spravdy, which is a Ukrainian source here, says, if you end the Russian economy, you end the war. And finally, Zelensky visited the Czech parliament and posed with a photo with Ukrainian cleaning women that were working there as well. So that's just a fun, this is a real man of the people moment for him. We often see him in the company of world leaders. And if you pay close attention, you'll see him at the front lines talking with soldiers and talking with leaders on the front and talking with soldiers. But you don't see him too often with just the regular people here. And this is a few of the regular people that are helping out in the Czech parliament, some of his own citizens. Let's go ahead and move over to the news out of the front lines here. We'll start off with the Defense Intelligence update on the situation in Ukraine from the United Kingdom. This talks about specifically the Russian casualty situation, stating that they've incurred around 950,000 dead and wounded. In the first 4 months, they likely sustained approximately 160,000 casualties, making this perhaps the costliest year of the war, assuming these numbers hold. So while they talk about some of the averages and the information, this is the situation that Russia is finding itself in. From the deep state map here, we've got the Ukrainians taking some additional territory back in, I am in the wrong language here. Let's switch to English. Lysivka here. You can take a look at what that looked like yesterday. The Ukrainians have managed to take this back. It's not a big village or anything else like that, but it's right in the Pokrovsk area. And the fact that these things are continuing to be taken by the Ukrainian forces in the Pokrovsk area, an area that Russia has clearly intended to be a major push, indicates that there are troubles for Russia in taking new territory. However, that's not all not all good news. We'll just put it that way. The Russians advanced in the Belgorod region and near Novoalexandrivka, Kotyarivka, Novosilka, and Novodarivka. So, and the day before, they occupied Zelenopol and advanced near Nova and Novomykolaievka. Now, most of those are teeny tiny advances, kind of smaller than even this Lysivka advance here by Ukraine. So, interesting as always to see what's going on. Now, we still have some of the incursion happening over here in the Kursk region, just a little bitty sliver. Let's see. We've got some additional movement in this area. You can see the new kind of areas that are being affected here. So we're seeing a lot of this stuff start to take place. The Institute for the Study of War reported that Ukrainian forces advanced in Toretsk, which I've not seen from any other source. I just showed the Pokrovsk information. But interesting to see that different sources will state the different areas that are being affected in different ways. I already talked about that earlier. This was an interesting video here, and I'm not sure if I'm quite catching on to how this is working here. Russian forces have begun using groups of divers to covertly infiltrate Ukrainian positions, taking advantage of underwater movement to evade detection. Ukrainian drone forces recently spotted and hit one diver in a successful strike. So, since this has not been properly located here from anything I've been able to see, and you can see the man does appear to have a wetsuit of some sort on, the Russians are using divers and swimmers effectively to cross the water and then dive into the Ukrainian positions as best they can. And the Ukrainians are finding them and rooting them out. It's never a complete video unless we also see what the Russians say is going on. This is War Gonzo again. Zaporizhzhia front, no significant changes in the lines of control over the last 24 hours. Donetsk front, fierce battles taking place in the Bogatyr area, sometimes turning into counter battles. The Russian armed forces are repelling attempts by the Ukrainian armed forces to counterattack, continuing to put pressure on the Ukrainian defense. Fighting also continues in the Otradnoye area and in the direction of Alexeyevka. Assault actions by the Russian armed forces continue in Kotlino. So what this really comes down to, there was no changes in the lines of control. He just didn't say it, except implied it. Chasiv Yar, no significant changes. Sumy, the Russian forces continue to carry out measures to create a buffer zone. Fighting is underway in the village of Belovode, and fighting for Luknaya and Vodolagi also continues. So again, you note that what he doesn't mention is that any changes in control happened. So even from the Russian perspective, it's not going too far. Now, this one was interesting, and it took me a little bit to realize what was going on. This Alexander Black went through this video here, and this is a relic-equipped T-72B3. This means that this is a new construction or new updated T-72B3 OBR 2025 that has been destroyed in the area. This indicates that even new manufactured equipment is, by the way, I remember now, this was in the Kursk region, and the troops in the Kursk region are clearly getting the most current equipment they can. Literally things that are coming right off the manufacturing line and being sent to Kursk to counter the Ukrainians. So, why is this important? it takes time to move a piece of equipment. It takes time to manufacture a piece of equipment. This tank was less than 3 months old, made it all the way to the front lines and was destroyed. And Russia does not have an enormous amount of production capacity. So they're literally throwing things right off the manufacturing line into the battle. Now, this really indicates that Russia's there is a positive to this. It means that Russia's supply lines are effectively being used, at least up to the Kursk region, at least from the Russian perspective, of course. But again, they should not be losing their most current equipment this quickly on the front lines. From the Ukraine control map, we've got a lot of the same information that we just talked about. Was the Ukrainian forces breached border defenses over in Kursk near Novi Put and attempted to breach southwest of Tekhino. And at this point, there wasn't a whole lot of information. We kind of gone through everything we know on that. Russian forces did go into Nova Poltavka, east of Pokrovsk, as well as show minor advances near Delivka and south of Bahatir. So again, we're looking at a mixed bag. Russians are taking some things. Ukraine is taking back some usually smaller things. So very interesting to see things continuing on. This is the nature of the combat day in and day out. There are no broad, huge strokes of land being captured right now. So with all that said, let's go to the interesting extras. I thought this customized R-73 air-to-air missile launcher was cute. Kind of a old style truck with a launcher attached. It's got electronic warfare systems on board. This is where they're adapting and improvising and overcoming. Hi, Al. Glad to see you on board. And we're getting to the end here, but always glad to see you here. So the Ukrainians are being creative with their actions here. Always interesting to see what the latest they come up with is. On a slightly more sobering note, Ukrainian children who are 3 to 4 years old do not remember their life without war. Russia took away their childhood. And these children recognize the sounds of drones flying overhead. They immediately go home to the basement to hide and shelter. This is their life. They don't know peace or safety. While we lay down in our warm, comfortable beds, these kids lay down in a cold basement or shelter to ride out yet another attack by Russia. This is an interview with a Ukrainian Navy serviceman, Dennis, who is manning looks like an anti-drone unit with some smaller caliber cannons. I never saw exactly which one, but they work with these gun-based systems to knock out Russian drones and prevent them from getting there. And he said basically that he feels bad every time one gets away. One gets through. Even though there was supposedly a ceasefire in the Black Sea, they state that the pace of the combat has not reduced. And finally, one of the things I like to show is when the Ukrainians are helping out their animals. Let me go ahead and mute this here. This dog ended up in the water, being frightened by the explosions during a Russian drone attack, and could not climb back out. These rescuers came in a boat to rescue this dog. They brought him on board and helped him out. It tells you their soul. This is the soul of Ukraine here. They care. They even care about the animals that they don't have to right now. They're being hit themselves. But they still will take care of the animals that they in every way they can. And that's everything for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Sorry for getting the notification out a little bit late tonight, but I want you to know that I appreciate you guys for showing up, even late in the stream, knowing you're late, because it really helps make these a lot more interesting to do. You guys are part of the family. And on all this, we in all these things, we can hope for peace, we can pray for peace. But in the end, they are fighting for their freedom. They have been under Russian control. They were under Russian control for decades. And they found they did not like it. They did not want it. They did not want to be oppressed. And yet, they are also not willing to just roll over. They will fight with even nobody helping them. There may be partisan warfare in the streets. It may be sabotage and destruction in quiet, tiny ways. But Ukraine will not stop until Russia is out. And that's everything for tonight. Again, thank you for joining me. You guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.